The lights were brighter than he imagined, not warm, not welcoming, just sharp and unforgiving, pouring down from above like a silent test. He stood at the center of the stage, a small figure surrounded by emptiness, feeling every eye in the room, even before anyone truly looked at him. The microphone felt heavier than it should have, cold metal pressing into his palm as his fingers tightened around it, as if letting go might make everything disappear. The judges smiled, polite smiles, professional smiles, the kind perfected over years of auditions, encouraging, distant, already prepared for disappointment. One judge leaned back slightly in their chair, arms resting casually, expression calm, but unreadable. Another tilted their head, lips curved gently, as though silently saying, "Go on, impress us if you can." It wasn't cruelty, it was familiarity. They had seen thousands like him. The audience murmured softly, a low ripple of sound that filled the vast theater. Some people adjusted in their seats. Others glanced at their phones, ready to record but not fully convinced. It would be worth the storage space. From the back rows, he could feel curiosity mixed with doubt. The unspoken question floating through the air, is this going to be another forgettable audition? He swallowed hard, his throat felt dry, tighter than it had ever felt back home. Back there, he sang on cracked sidewalks and quiet corners, where passing cars drowned out mistakes and strangers never stayed long enough to judge. Here, silence waited for him. Thick, heavy silence that demanded something extraordinary. He introduced himself, voice barely louder than the room. The accent slipped out naturally, honest and unpolished. A few eyebrows lifted. The judges nodded politely, still smiling, still kind, still distant. One of them thanked him and gestured gently toward the stage, the Universa. Signal to begin. For a moment, he didn't move. Memories rushed in uninvited. Nights spent humming softly so he wouldn't wake anyone. Days when laughter followed him down narrow streets. Voices telling him singing was just noise, not a future. He remembered the long trip to get here, the borrowed money, the promise he made to himself that even if no one believed in him, he would believe in this moment. His hands trembled slightly now. He adjusted his grip on the microphone, drawing in a slow breath the way he practiced when fear tried to take over. In the judges' chairs, the smiles remained fixed, patient, expectant, safe. Somewhere in the audience, someone cleared their throat. Another cough followed. The silence grew heavier, pressing down on his chest. This was the moment where many cracked, where voices wobbled, nerves won, and dreams quietly folded in on themselves. He lifted his gaze at last, eyes scanning the room. He didn't see faces anymore, just lights and shadows. The stage felt enormous, but inside him, something steadied. A quiet thought rose above the noise: sing like no one is smiling. Sing like no one expects anything. The music was about to start. And in that fragile pause, between polite smiles and honest surprise, no one in the room realized they were seconds away from witnessing something they would remember, long after the applause faded. The first notes began softly, almost timidly, filling the theater like a fragile whisper that tiptoed over the polished stage floor. At first it sounded simple, unassuming, like any other audition, but there was something beneath it, something raw, something unpolished yet striking, that made the room hold its collective breath. The boy's fingers lightly strummed the guitar, each string vibrating with purpose, carrying not just sound but the weight of every struggle, every late night, every doubt he had ever faced. His voice followed, delicate at first, fragile, almost quivering, as if testing the waters of this enormous space and the thousands of eyes fixated on him. Then, slowly, it began to shift. The notes gained strength, the melody twisting and rising, growing richer and deeper with every word. It was not just singing, it was storytelling, a confession, a plea. He sang of streets that had never been forgiving, of empty pockets and broken promises, of dreams whispered under flickering streetlight. And yet, in every note, there was hope. It shimmered quietly, almost painfully, threading through the cracks of his voice like sunlight through a stormy sky. The polite smiles of the judges began to falter, replaced by furrowed brows, eyes widening in curiosity, a subtle shift in posture as they leaned in, unknowingly drawn into his world. The audience had stopped whispering. Phones were low. Red. Conversations vanished as if swallowed by the resonance of his voice. The small, shy boy in simple clothes had captured attention without flashy theatrics, without overproduced arrangements, without even trying. There was a sincerity that demanded acknowledgement. Every chord, every syllable carried authenticity, carrying fragments of a life that few in the room could claim to understand, but that everyone could feel. The music didn't just reach their ears. It reached them in a place deeper, somewhere human, somewhere tender, somewhere that could not easily turn away. 30 seconds in, the transformation was undeniable. The polite atmosphere that had hung over the judges melted into anticipation. One judge's fingers tapped nervously against the table, another leaned forward, elbows sting, face illuminated with a mixture of surprise and admiration. Their eyes followed his every movement, captivated not just by the skill, but by the honesty that seemed to pour from every pore. You could see it in their reactions, subtle shifts at first, then sharper, as if they were trying to contain themselves but failing. The audience mirrored them, collectively leaning in, leaning toward the stage, toward him, toward the story he was telling with nothing but his voice and a guitar. He closed his eyes, allowing the notes to carry him, and in that act the audience felt him, truly felt him. There were no masks here, no polished veneer, just an unfiltered, beating heart exposed through song. Every vibration of the guitar, every breath, every pause was deliberate, sculpted not for applause, but for connection. In the judge's eyes, that connection registered immediately. He was no longer just an auditionee, he was a vessel, channeling something extraordinary. And the audience, once hesitant, now sat spellbound, caught in the gravity of his performance, unable to look away, unable to blink, fearing they might miss a fraction of the magic unfolding. By the 30-second mark, it was no longer about the boy, or the stage, or even the competition. It was about the moment, the feeling, the undeniable truth of raw talent meeting raw emotion. Smiles had vanished, replaced by wide-eyed awe. The room was silent, not with expectation but with wonder, and somewhere, in the background, the subtle sound of someone breathing a little too loudly betrayed the. Even the calmest spectators were shaken, already realizing that something remarkable was happening before them. Something that would linger in memory long after the final note had faded. The boy's eyes remained closed as he reached the final verse, his voice soaring with a power that seemed impossible given his slight frame. Every note carried a story, the streets he had walked alone, the nights he had sung under dim lamplight, the endless rehearsals in small cramped rooms where no one listened. It was a voice that held pain, hope, fear, and courage all at once, blending into something transcendent. The audience leaned forward in their seats, collectively holding their breath, as if afraid to interrupt the spell he had woven with his music. Every strum of the guitar echoed through the eater, harmonizing perfectly with the trembling strength in his voice. Like a heartbeat in sync with the room's own anticipation. The judges were frozen in place, one of them covered a hand over their mouth, trying to contain the emotion threatening to surface. Another's eyes glistened with tears that had no time to fall. The polite smiles that had greeted him at the start were gone, replaced by something raw and unguarded. They were witnessing a transformation, a simple boy becoming a force that no one could ignore. Every subtle movement of his fingers, every breath he drew, was amplified by the theater's acoustics, and the silence that had grown around him. The energy in the room shifted from cautious curiosity to full immersion. The kind that makes people forget to blink, forget to breathe. As if time itself had paused to watch him. Then, without warning, it happened. The final chord resonated, hanging in the air like a fragile glass ornament suspended on a string. The room held it for a heartbeat, waiting for the inevitable. And then, a burst of sound, a crash of gold as the golden buzzer slammed down with theatrical force. The theater erupted. Judges stood, arms flailing, eyes wide, mouths open in unrestrained joy. The audience roared, cheers and gasps blending into a wave of pure energy that crashed over the small boy on stage. He froze, stunned, unable to believe what was happening. Tears streamed down his face as he dropped the guitar for a moment, overwhelmed by the reality of the moment. The polished, professional theater lights now felt warm, celebratory, as if the world itself had chosen to embrace him. He sank to his knees, hands clasped together, shaking as adrenaline and relief collided. Around him, the golden buzzer continued its descent, lights flashing, gold confetti filling the air, swirling like tiny stars captured mid-fall. The crowd's applause didn't fade, it grew, swelling in volume and intensity, a living, breathing entity made of excitement, awe, and pure emotion. The judges moved closer, extending their hands, patting him on the back, offering congratulations that felt like the acknowledgement of every dream he had dared to whisper to the night sky. In that instant, all the fear, all the uncertainty, all the struggle dissolved into something that felt infinite. And yet, he remained still, letting the moment wash over him, letting the weight of it settle. For years he had imagined this day, but reality far exceeded imagination. Every polite smile that had greeted him earlier now felt like a distant memory, replaced by the overwhelming affirmation that his talent, his heart, and his perseverance mattered. He understood in that suspended moment that life could pivot on a single decision, a single note, a single act of bravery. The music continued softly in the background, but the performance had already transcended sound. It had become an experience, a story etched into the hearts of everyone in that theater. The boy rose slowly, wiping his tears, and allowed himself a tentative smile, one not of politeness or caution, but of triumph, humility, and disbelief. He had stood alone, nervous and uncertain, and now the golden buzzer had exploded, propelling him into a future he had only dared to imagine in fleeting moments. The applause, the cheers, the flashing lights, they were all proof that a single voice, when carried with courage and honesty, could change everything.